Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. My guests share their photographs and inspire us to try new techniques that help us improve our photography skills. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com. If you haven't subscribed to the Happiness Hour YouTube channel, please do so that if you miss one of our live sessions, you can catch it on YouTube. Tonight's guest is Mark Goeman. Mark Goeman. Mark is a landscape photographer based in Texas who has been joining us on the Happiness Hour as an attendee for a while now. Before we start every session, I encourage everyone to share their social media handles and their websites. Mark did just that. And after taking a peek at his website, which is filled with rich and varied Texas landscapes, I invited him to share his work with us. Mark uses his lens as a tool. And in tonight's presentation, Shooting Local, Unveiling Things Hidden in Plain Sight, Mark will talk about and remind us to look at those things we encounter daily and take for granted. He'll prod us to focus on where we live in a different way through the eyes of a photographer. If you're on Instagram, look for Mark at gr.studios.photography. And you can connect with him through his website, grstudios.com. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Mark. So, Mark, before you get started, I want to know what GR Studios, what's GR stand for? Because that does not make sense to me.
Yeah, well, I've been in the engineering business for quite a long time, and I started developing engineering software probably around 2000, 2002 in that area, and had a close friend whose last name is Richard. And my last name is Goeman. So we decided to create a company, and we went back and forth on whether it was going to be RG Studios or GR Studios. So we flipped a coin, and I won the coin flip. So it ended up being GR Studios. And the company is still active. We turned it into an LLC for personal protection, basically, but developed a lot of engineering software over the years. And you know how life is. He got remarried and just started getting really busy. So he kind of got out of that part of it. And with my love of photography, I quit doing the side work like I was doing so much in the past and decided to convert it over to a full photography website.
Okay.
So since I already had the company, so to speak, I was able to just convert everything over and use that for anything that I'm able to do photography-wise, with taxes and that sort of thing. So,
well, that makes sense. I'm just intrigued by people's usernames on Instagram. So sometimes when I see them, it's just one of those little mysteries. I want to know. I'm being nosy. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. So, you're no stranger to the Happiness Hour. I recently met you in person at the Georgetown Photography Festival just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So that was really nice. It was nice that, you only live a couple of hours away for you to get here. But we were kind of talking a little bit off camera about, when you started coming and what got you here. So you actually said some nice things, so I'm going to make you repeat them here. So.
Well, it's true. I've been in photography as a hobby for a long time. 1982, I bought a Nikon FE 35 millimeter camera and got into it pretty serious for a hobbyist. Then over the years, it kind of comes and it goes, life and that sort of thing. Transferred into digital photography, got real serious about it again about 5 or 6 years ago. And then probably about 8 or 9 months ago, I guess, kind of going through a photography rut, if you will. Was really busy at work, and I was just, being lazy, sitting on the couch, trying to find something to motivate me. And I had done a web search, about a year or so ago, for just Texas photographers, just looking at local based photographers and the photography that they produce, and ran across a Texas Highways article that listed the top 25 Instagram photographers or Texas Instagram photographers to follow. So I started going through the list just one by one, just amazing photography, and your name was in there. So I clicked on your website and wow, she's got some awesome photographs. And then there was this thing up there that said the happiness hour. And I thought, what in the world is that? Is that, is that a drinking thing or, what is it? So I clicked on it and it was this thing we're doing right now. And I was so busy with work, working a lot of extra hours, I just logged it in the back of my mind. And it came to the fore again about last September or October. I was kind of frustrated because I wanted to get out and do more photography, but I couldn't. There's a lot of things going on, and I needed something to kind of kickstart the process. So I logged on one evening. I think it was either late September or early October, and pretty much I think I've missed one or two since then, but really have enjoyed it. Great meeting you, but the thing with the Georgetown Photography Festival also got to meet John Fisher and Chris Fitch and a lot of the other folks that were there, and just incredible photographers, incredible photography. The work that they do is just awesome.
What I love about it is, as large as Texas is, and a lot of people in this room are not from Texas, but Texas is a big state. But I always say this, photography brings people together. And all of a sudden, it's a very small room when you start, reaching out to people. Just, hey, I'm coming to Dallas. John Fisher, do you want to hang out with me? I'm sure he's like going, no. But, I've known him for several years. And I've met a lot of people through this room. It's a great community. And that's one of the things that I love about the Happiness Hour, because you never know. You may start out as an attendee and then you get this, hey, Mark, don't you want to come to a
Yeah, be careful.
And thank you for not fighting, because a lot of people will, kind of like, oh, I don't know about this. And then I'm like, then I have to pull out the heavy guns, and I will. But you made it easy. And so I'm very, very excited to have you here.
Well, thank you.
I did a lot of snooping on your websites because that's what I do. Excuse me. And so let's just go ahead and get started.
Okay.
And we'll get you to share your screen. And everybody, if you have any questions for Mark, just make sure you put those in the chat and I will put those in front of him.
I kind of started doing local work simply because I'm tied up on the weekends most often. I've got 3 granddaughters. They're all high school aged. They're very active. All 3 play soccer. 2 of them are in club soccer. So every weekend we're traveling somewhere for soccer. And it gets frustrating from my perspective because I take them. I'm the soccer mom, if you will. So I take them everywhere we go. And that limits the travel that I have available to go to really cool places like John Fisher gets to go to for his photography. He has some awesome shots, but I don't get out as much as I want to. But photography, I think Chris Fitch put it on his website. Photography is an itch, and you have to scratch it. It just won't go away. So I decided to start shooting local, and by local, I'm talking about my local community. You look around and there are things that are beautiful where we live. Not sure where everybody else is from specifically. If you like where you live, if you don't like where you live, we can always complain about the weather no matter where we are. But what ends up happening is I think we take for granted where we live. We're never satisfied. We're never at peace with where we are in many cases. We're always looking at the grass on the other side of the fence. It's always greener somewhere else. If I only lived in Arizona, if I only lived in Western North Carolina or wherever, man, I could just take photography. I could go do photography anytime I wanted to and just have these epic grand landscapes or whatever it is that you like to do or like to shoot. And inevitably what happens is we don't do that. But there are so many things in our local areas, regardless of where you live. I think beauty is everywhere. Sometimes you have to look hard for it, but I think it's there. And as photographers, that's part of what we do, is to capture things in ways that make other people, wow, man, that's awesome. So the shot that's up on the screen right now, this is Clear Creek. I live in South Texas, or the Gulf Coast part of Texas, I should say. It's Southeast Texas, just south of Houston. And we have a lot of creeks and bayous that run through this area. This is Clear Creek, which runs near Pearland, Texas. I'm standing on a bridge. There are cars that are going back and forth to and from, people hollering at me even sometimes as they drive by. But I happened to notice, this was taken in June a couple of years ago, I think maybe 3 years ago, late June, sunset. And I just thought, one of these times I'm going to have to stop by and try to get a shot. Well, this was probably my 12th, maybe 13th stop there to get this shot. But I was just amazed at the clouds, the juxtaposition between the creek, the way that it's flowing. And I thought, you know what? I need to start looking at things a little bit more in this manner locally. And ironically, this shot, there was something going on in Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine around that time to submit photos. It was kind of like a contest with no reward, basically. But this one placed first, and it was published in January of 2021. Much to my surprise, I was just totally shocked when the editor emailed me and let me know what was going on. But we have to look for it sometimes locally. And that's the concept of going through and doing that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to just put a short list, somewhat short, of a lot of photographers that I'm really fond of following their work. And you can see Linda's right there at the top left.
I will pay you a little later. Really.
Some of these folks you've probably heard of, some of them you may not have. But if you get the time, stop and go to their websites. Don't just go to their Instagram feed or look at it at Vero at their work. And this is a short list. I could start to add, especially after some of the folks I met in Georgetown a few weeks ago. I should add them to this list as well.
Hey, Mark,
yeah.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? Just for stop moving your mouse because it's jumping all over the page.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But these folks here, they're just really, really good. If you go to their websites, look at their photographs from their website. Don't just look at it in Instagram. Don't look at it in Vero only. It's a good stop-off place to jump off to another spot. But when you get the chance to look at their website, especially if you're looking at it on a large screen, or even at least your tablet, you get to see the depth and the quality of the work. It's not a postage stamp thumbnail size that you're looking at from your phone. And some of them also have published books. I love printed work. I would much rather look at a photograph in a book or on a print hanging on the wall, opposed to looking at it online. But in any case, these are some awesome photographers, and their work speaks for itself. So this is where I'm from, Friendswood, Texas, south of Houston, roughly halfway between Houston and Galveston, if you're familiar with where Houston is located. Our claim to fame, NASA is kind of in this area. I don't know if y'all can see my mouse there where it says Webster, but that's where the Johnson Space Center is, the control command center. And a lot of the astronauts and some of the scientists that work at NASA, especially when it started back in the 60s, they settled and lived in Friendswood. The original people that started Friendswood were the Quakers. They moved down here and planted a ton of trees, and it was a very rural community. But when we talk about local, I kind of see local as two different things. It can be your local community right where you live, say a 2 to 3, 4 mile radius of your home. Or if you travel, especially if you travel with friends or family, and it's not necessarily a photography trip, you travel and you get that little afternoon or that early morning that you can get up and take some photographs. So you're kind of confined to a specific area, so you can't venture too far from your hotel or the home that you're staying in or the condo or wherever you are. So that's how I kind of view local. So I shoot a lot of things within 4 or 5 miles of Friendswood, Texas. And what I'm trying to do in essence is convey a composition and a photograph that makes people say, wow, is that really from Friendswood, Texas? You know, it's flat here. Gulf Coast is a flat area. It's a coastal plain. We're only about 40 feet above sea level. We're prone to hurricanes, tropical storms, so we do get flooding a lot. But if you can capture something that's local from a perspective of a photographer, people will start to look around and maybe appreciate where they live. So when I first got started locally, this is a mural that an artist painted on the side of a wall in Friendswood, Texas. And you can only see, if you look at this upper left photo right here, the only thing that you could see was this long section, which is also shown in the upper right part. This is probably about a block or so from the main drag that goes through Friendswood, Texas. You know, and if you blink, you'll miss it. But when you do see it from the main road, you only see this larger portion that has the cardinal that's shown on the side of the building. One day I decided to stop and take a little bit better, closer look at it and noticed that there was a little side panel that was over there as well. So I got to thinking, you know, it would be neat to photograph that and put the two parts together. So I waited until we had an overcast day because I wanted some nice, soft, even light. And I took these two photographs. The top left and the top right are raw images. And then the lower left and the lower right are the images that are in process working with. I use Camera Raw and Photoshop primarily to do my post-processing. So the whole idea was, I wonder if people would buy this. So I started working on it. And then this is the final shot with everything put together. I contacted the artist and she was really surprised. She really liked it. And I asked her if it would be possible to get permission to sell this if anybody was interested in buying it. And I even told her I'd split it with her. I said, you know, probably sell 1 or 2 of them. But she says, no. She gave me written authorization and allowed me to do it. And I've sold quite a few of these, actually. There's a local shop here in Friendswood that people will sell different things, crafts and that sort of thing. And I've probably sold about 40 or 45 of these here locally.
Mark,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Somebody was curious. You did, who was the artist? Was it Anat Ronan?
It's yes.
Okay.
I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Anat is her first name.
Yeah. Anat. Yeah.
Anat. Yes.
There you go, Jamie.
Yes. And she's done quite a few different murals and things just in the Houston area, but she's done it all over the country as well. And she has a site on, or a page on Instagram as well. If you follow her, she's got some awesome stuff. But this one here, you know, I've been able to sell quite a few. And what I'm hoping to do, at least through what we're going tonight, is just inspire you to look locally, but also inspire you. If you don't know how to process your images, learn how to process your images. It's worth it because, frankly, post-processing can be as important as the actual taking of the initial photograph. It can be very, very important. This is primarily a 2-shot photograph, or 2 photographs merged together. Would not be able to do that in 1 shot and get what I wanted to anyway, as far as the vision that I had for this photograph. I took a Photoshop for landscape photographer's course a few years ago. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Mads Peter Iverson. He's a Danish photographer, but he put together a course. It's outstanding. And this is not a paid endorsement or anything like that. Mads doesn't even know I've put it up here. But it's for beginner to advanced for people that are interested in landscape photography, but it's good for any kind of photography if you want to learn how to use Photoshop. It's normally $300, but I was just on his Instagram page the other day, and he's got a discount code for $100 off if you're interested. So I highly encourage you, whatever post-processing software that you use, whether it's Lightroom, Camera Raw, Photoshop, whatever, but learn how to use it. It's very, very important. So here's a prime example. My dog takes me for a walk every day, usually 3-4 miles. We'll go round trip. And I'm always looking, if you've got the photography itch, you're always looking around, boy, that might be a good shot, or that might be a good shot. I'll have to come back to this. I'll have to come back to that. So what do you shoot? Well, everything. Now, I'm not into street photography as far as the actual process. I love looking at street photography. I haven't ventured into that quite yet, but anything that you see that's interesting to you is worth stopping and making a photograph of. And when you're doing that sort of thing, this applies regardless of what type of photography you're in. You want to look for leading lines, you want to look for ways to frame the subject, epic light, different angles, different types of composition, shadows, people, that sort of thing. So we were walking, and I had my eye on this old home for quite some time. Drive by it every single day, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of my truck, and I can't get excited about the composition. So one afternoon, my dog's taking me for my walk. We're slowly going through, and I walk across the street. This is a 5-lane road with a left turn lane in the middle. This used to be a little 2-lane rural road years and years ago. Long story short, we're coming through, and I end up walking back because they have construction that's going on. So I have to get farther away from the street. And just to the left of, in this photograph, where this light pole, or this traffic light pole is over here, is a side street. So we came through it at a different location than we normally do, and the oak tree caught my eye, and I happened to see the big limb up above kind of framing that home. So after we got back to the house after our walk, I grabbed my camera gear, walked back over here, set up my tripod, and took several shots. Initially, when you start to look at this, it's like, wow, yeah, boy. So you got a house with, traffic lights and a tree and stripes on the road. Yeah, that's a really awesome photograph, Mark. Yeah, I've seen a lot better than that. But if you know how to post-process, that can affect your composition. A lot of times people won't take shots because too many things are in the way. You take the next frame here, and this is what you want to do, or this is what I want to do anyway. I want to remove all of the distracting elements. I want to tell a story with the photograph. Don't be afraid to crop your image. Don't be afraid to remove distracting items. And you can see all of these things that I've got in here, I wanted to remove, and I use Photoshop primarily to perform that task. I want to turn familiar items into something a little bit less familiar. And the story that I want to tell here, here's the final image. I kind of wanted a vintage film look. I wanted it to kind of harken back to a simpler time, make you think about your grandma or your grandpa sitting out on the porch. Just that peaceful late summer afternoon where, time's kind of still. So once I processed this image, I desaturated it. I have a shortcut or a preset that I've created. It's a slight black toning, which kind of gives it a little bit of that black image, just kind of a little faded look. And that's exactly what I was looking for. I like the way that the tree frames the home. And it's from a perspective that most people don't see, at least of this home. So that was kind of the concept there. Here's another building. It's a beautiful building. It's quite set back from the road. But this is the raw image. And when I shoot, I typically expose to the right, which basically means I kind of push my histogram to the right, without blowing out the highlights or that sort of thing, because you're capturing data. And the more data that you can capture when you shoot raw, the more you can do with it once you get it into Photoshop or your post-processing software. If you underexpose too much and you need to bring the shadows up, you introduce noise into your photos and that sort of thing. So this was taken actually near dusk, even though it doesn't look like it's near dusk, because I've kind of pushed this to the right of the histogram. Camera was on a tripod, maybe 2 feet off the ground, more or less. But I looked at this, I got it back home, brought it into Photoshop, I looked, I said, wow, that's another awesome shot. Boy, why did you take that? So you start working with it, you start processing it, and then this is the final image after I got through processing it. And there's a lot of things that you can do in Photoshop. I got rid of all the distracting elements. If I go back, of course, you can see all of these things, the reflections in the windows, all of the stickers that are on the door. There's a sign that's over here in this window. This is a big cable telephone box. I even removed the window over here. I removed the vans over here to the left of the building. I cropped the photo. I made a selection of the building in and of itself. And you can separate your subject from the background through processing through various means. I darkened the background. I used some luminosity masks to bring out the clouds just a little bit. I highlighted the building in and of itself, made it a little higher contrast, added some texture, some clarity, kind of wanted it to stand off the page just a little bit, separated as much as I could from the background. But this was a building that, depending on the season, they decorate the lights. They have different colored lights at Christmas time. They put things in the windows for Valentine's Day, big letters that say love and that sort of thing. But I thought it was a neat looking building. So I just kind of wanted to capture it in a way that looks different than what you see it on a normal day during the week. Another thing is to look for unique items. This is a street, it's called Spreading Oaks. It's beautiful. This is a summertime shot. It was very, very hot the day that I took this photo. This was, it's 10 times I visited this different site. I had seen the sunbeams riding my bike through here one day and thought that would make a nice photograph. But it took me 10 visits to come back to get those sunbeams to show up again, just at the right time. So you start looking at your different compositions at these different places. I used some luminosity masks to kind of enhance the light at the top of the trees, but I wanted to convey a look and a perspective on this street that's not normally seen just by driving down the street. Here's another building. And if you're not into architecture, that's okay. I understand. But I'm looking for unique items that are local, unique buildings. This is an Allstate insurance building. And I'd made 5 or 6 trips to this building too. I happened to catch the sky and the clouds in a unique kind of a little more dramatic fashion. So set this up late afternoon. It was almost dusk. Was able to do the same thing with this building, kind of separate it from its background, creating a selection in Photoshop. Did a little bit of dodging, a little bit of burning to enhance and bring out some of the darker areas, like underneath the cover. Showed this to the agent who actually has this building, and there's a print of this hanging up in her office. So sometimes you can have a little bit of extra that can go on with your photographs too. If you have a nice building or something along those lines, show it to the owner or to the people that are in that building. They may purchase a photo from you. Here's another shot. This is Stevenson Park, where my dog takes me for the walk. This was a late afternoon shot. It had been raining most of the day. But what I wanted to do was kind of highlight this mural. I don't know who painted this one. I don't think it was the same artist. But it had been raining and there was a little bit of reflection with water standing on the pavement in the parking lot there. So this was a handheld shot. I kind of got down on my knees, took several shots, and then brought it into Photoshop. Used some luminosity masks again to enhance the reflection in the water, made a selection of the mural in and of itself, darkened the background some, lightened the sign to kind of make it stand out. Reflections are really cool. Look for those, especially after it rains. There are a lot of different examples on Instagram too of people that do this. It's a good time to go out and shoot. Look for scenes based on the time of year that you wouldn't normally see. The colors, especially for the Gulf Coast part of Texas, this is rare. We don't get the seasonal colors down here like a lot of folks do in other parts of the country. But this was an interesting shot. This is a actual, it's a creek bypass. It's for flood control. And I took this the Sunday after Thanksgiving. It had been raining for 3 or 4 days. And I had been looking around. We had a color change this year. And I've been looking and looking and looking and end up driving down a weird side street that dead ended. And all the water was standing there. So I had my camera gear with me, took some time to kind of scout out the area. There are homes off to the left, and there are homes off to the right. But this one little part of this bypass was basically uninhabited. So set up my tripod. I did an exposure blend. I took a shot basically for the exposure on the top half of the photograph. The second or the bottom half, I put on a 10-stop ND filter, and then brought the 2 shots into Photoshop and then blended them together to get the scene that we've got there. But anytime, you know, especially now, I know Linda, you've been posting wildflower shots. A lot of other folks have been doing the same thing here in Texas. They're going like crazy. This is another barn, if you will, that's located in Friendswood. And I had my eye on this for quite some time. It's mostly green down here. It's hot and humid. We don't get a whole lot of different colors and that sort of thing during the seasons. But I happened to catch this at the right time. I kept waiting. This would not have worked if everything was green and the trees were all out. You could barely see the barn. But this is at an intersection with the main road that goes through Friendswood. And New Year's morning, I woke up, it was foggy, and I thought of this barn. So I drove over there. It was around 8 or 8:30. The fog was so thick, you could barely see the barn. So I was very, very frustrated because I'd been waiting for that type of atmosphere to take this shot. So I went back home. I waited an hour, drove back over there. It was still just crazy. It was starting to let up a little bit, but I still couldn't see the barn very well. So I went and got me something to eat. Finally got back there around 10:30, and it was just right. So set up my tripod, took several shots. Was very pleased with the outcome finally. But I haven't had a day like that since. And of course, down here, everything's greening up. So this shot was just a specific time of year that I couldn't do at any other time. So here's another example of an old building. I had my eye on this too for quite some time. Kept thinking, it's just an old rundown building. Nothing special about that shot. So just kept driving by. It's on the main drag of Friendswood. I think the people that actually own this house live behind it because there's another house just behind this street or behind this house right here off the street. But I was driving through here late October, and you can't see so much on the top of this tree, but all the leaves had started to change and were really yellow. So went home, grabbed my camera gear, came back over. I'm standing in the median. And what drew me to this was I didn't want to take a photograph, a snapshot. I didn't want it to just be just your average everyday snapshot. This mannequin has been in this window for 15 or 20 years. And she just stands there and she's just quiet and she's looking over towards that tree. But this day, the tree just jumped out at me. So I took this photograph and brought it back into Photoshop. I desaturated all the colors into where everything was black and white, and then slowly started bringing up some of the colors. And I did a lot of dodging and burning on the tree. And my concept here was, in essence, Scream. You know, this tree is this monster. It was around Halloween, I guess, about the time I took the photograph. So I overly enhanced some of the different parts of the photo purposefully. I didn't want it to be real as much as I did surreal. I wanted it to kind of look like this tree was overtaking the house and was about to get this lady, this mannequin that's inside the shop. I'm not sure what this was. I don't know if it was a clothing shop. I really don't know what it was, but that poor mannequin has been there for so long, and she's still there. I checked on her. She's still safe. The leaves fell off the tree, and the tree monster didn't get her. So don't worry too much about her. She's okay. Other places to look. I'm sure we all have parks that are nearby. The photo on the left, this is from Frankie Carter Randolph Park, which is a county park. It's within the city limits of Friendswood, but it's run by the county. And again, this was another one of those shots that this was probably my 8th or 9th visit. I used to go over there and let my dog take me for a walk through this area. The back part of this area here, this is a low water crossing, and it's real thick, and it's somewhat remote to go through here. But one of the days that I had gone through there, again, the sun rays, the sunbeams were coming down through the canopy. And of course, I didn't have my camera gear with me. So made a mental note and knew I wanted to go back. So made several trips back until I got the timing just right, and took that shot. But everybody that's seen that, that's familiar with that park, they don't even know that that trail is there. They don't even think that's Friendswood. So that was a compliment in and of itself for me, just to capture something that makes people think that's really Friendswood, Texas. On the right, I like old signs. This was an old hardware store, Friendswood Hardware. No longer in business as a hardware store. It's more of a nursery now. They're utilizing the building, but they kept the sign. And this was another example. You kind of have to be patient. They don't turn the neon sign on very often. This was another at least 10 trip visit until I finally went in one day and asked them if they would be willing to turn the neon lights on for me so I could take a photograph. And they graciously did. So a little PR work for myself, was able to get a shot, and they have this photograph hanging in their building too. So it was well worth it. But vintage signs, parks, those sort of things, are things that you can start to look for. So being from Texas, Longhorns are definitely synonymous with the state of Texas, whether you're a University of Texas fan or not, which is kind of their trademark, hook 'em horns. This is also just an empty field in Friendswood. This was actually in autumn. And down here in the Houston or the Gulf Coast area, we get these yellow flowers twice a year, usually late fall, and then they're rampant now. They're all over the place in the fields. And we have a lot of livestock, obviously, in the Texas area. But this was an interesting shot because there are probably about 8 or 9 other longhorns just off the scene to the back right. And I walk up and there's this gate, and this is a handheld shot. And I took this shot. I took several different shots. And he just kept wandering over and getting a little closer and a little closer. And then finally he just stopped. So it was perfect. I'd already taken probably 30 shots, and the last shot I took was this one here. So look for things like this. I don't know if you've got, wildlife like this in your area, but this is something also that you can take that's local, that you don't have to drive 30 or 40 or 100 miles to go and find. Wildlife. I think, Linda, you're into shooting wildlife. I'm not that patient. I have to shoot ducks because ducks stand still. But we have area called El Franco Lee Park, which has got wetlands in it. And was able to go over there one day. I was shooting the wetlands, taking various shots, and these two ducks flew in, got on this little mud bank, and just stopped. They were staring. I don't know what they were staring at, but they just were as still as can be. And unfortunately for me, I didn't have my zoom lens with me. I was just actually out there with my regular camera and a smaller or shorter focal length. But took this shot and was able to crop it and manipulate it some in Photoshop to bring out some of the texture of the feathers. But look for wildlife, for birds. I know a lot of y'all do that already, but it's something that's in your local parks and the surrounding areas. Wildflowers. This photo also, I submitted to the Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine, along with that one I showed at the very start. It's also published in the same month. It was a second place winner in its category. I was very surprised, but this was taken alongside a ditch, if you will. There's a hike and bike trail that runs through South Belt Ellington area. It's a community just north of Friendswood, and just behind these flowers is a drainage ditch. But there was this little outcropping of Indian paintbrush. Happened to have my camera with me. I got down low, zoomed in on it, and took several different shots. And was very pleased with the outcome, with what I was able to see. But it's that photography eye that we have that you're looking for when you're especially shooting local. It's a little bit harder sometimes to find compositions. Perspective. Perspective is very, very important. This is a wooden walkway that goes through the wetlands in El Franco Lee Park. I'm going to get a little bit of drink. Hold on just a sec. And it doesn't look too wet the day that this photo was taken. We do get drought phases down here in the Houston area, even though we're along the coast. And we hadn't had rain probably in about a month. So I was over in this area. I used to go over here quite often. And I wanted to take a shot, but I couldn't get the composition right. I just never was pleased with it until this afternoon. There were some storm clouds coming through. It was amazing. You know, we hadn't had any rain in so long. So I took my camera gear out here, and I had seen these fasteners that are used to affix these. They're like railroad ties, but they're actually bigger. They're more like 6x6 or 8x8. That's used to kind of keep you inside the walkway. But I wanted to take a shot to highlight those fasteners. So this is a focus stacked shot. I think I took 3 shots and blended them together in Photoshop. But I also did the same thing here that I did with another photo. Excuse me. I desaturated, took all the colors out. A lot of times if I do a black and white or a sepia toned type of photograph, I don't convert to black and white or convert to monochrome. I'll just desaturate all the colors and then slowly start to bring some of them back to see what it looks like. So this one I was able to bring in, enhance a little bit along the outside. But when I merged them together, I was able to really focus on the fasteners and hopefully tell a story with a leading line going through there and emphasize the drought that we were going through. Off the beaten path. This is also in the wetlands area of El Franco Lee Park. And what's ironic about this shot is just to the right, behind this line of trees, is a subdivision. The backyards are backed up to this line of trees. On the left side is what we call, well, they used to call it the hike and bike trail. Now it's just the wetlands trail because they've expanded it, and it's probably about 6 or 7 miles long. But it goes through a really dense area of brush that loops around the wetlands. This area, again, this is like a little overflow ditch, if you will. And I had come to the corner where it turns headed back toward the north and saw this little trail off to the left. Of course, I was looking for different compositions woodland type of photography. So I took the trail and ended up down in this ditch and looked up and just kind of liked what I saw. So took several shots and composed it. And this is not manipulated in Photoshop to mirror anything. This is the actual composition in the field. Just did some minor editing once I did get it into Photoshop. But you sometimes have to get off the beaten path and go into some different areas that a lot of people don't normally go to. This also, this was Harris County, Texas, which is the county that Houston's actually in. And they've got a print of this as well. They really liked it to show different parts of the park, even though this is what I thought was kind of funny. It's a drainage channel. This is a shot looking into the wetlands area. El Franco Lee Park is off in the distance. That walkway, you can't see it in this photo, but it's about mid-frame in the open area past the line of tree, in between the two lines of trees there. This was taken on a hill from J. Frank Dobie High School. And what was really fascinating about this was a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I believe it was, Hurricane Laura was headed towards the Houston, Galveston area. And this was the leading edge of the hurricane, or the outermost bands, if you will, that had already come along the coast and was starting to move inland. And it was very, very windy that afternoon. I don't know if you could tell, all the trees are leaning, and that this is a double, or a two-shot blend, if you will. I had to take a shot to kind of freeze some of the motion in the trees, and then take another shot to expose for the sky, and then blended them together in Photoshop. But thankfully for us, but not so much for Louisiana, the hurricane turned overnight and ended up going in and made a direct hit in the New Orleans, or just, I think, west of New Orleans, went up through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and did a lot of damage. So we were spared that time. I really feel bad for those folks. But get out when there's bad weather, when there's stormy skies or epic skies, and take photographs. It's so important, because that enables you to depict something that everybody sees on a regular basis. Just behind me, where I was standing to take this photograph, there's a football field, there's a soccer field, there's a track, there's people out there actually that are out running around and that sort of thing. So I'm looking in an area that's depicting something that you wouldn't normally think of from Dobie High School. All of these shots here were taken within 2 miles of where I was living at the time. This is most of them are from El Franco Lee Park. The wetlands is the top middle shot, but these are all just in the area. And there's several different things to think about when you're taking these shots. Depth of field, getting close. This lower one here, kind of in the lower left side in the bottom, I had just come back from a walk along the hike and bike trail, and it started raining. And they had quite a few of these trees that were lining the side of the path, and I happened to notice these water droplets that were on the pine trees. So I chugged home and got my camera gear, went back over there and took some shots, and was able to capture a water droplet and get the reflection. But that's what you're looking for. It's upper right, same thing. This was taken, this body of water in the upper right is the same body of water in the upper left. It's just a section, different section of that little lake. It's a little finger lake, and it's actually an entrance to a subdivision, Riverstone Ranch. So I wanted to depict something a little bit different that doesn't look like it's the entrance to a subdivision, to make it look like something that might be out in the country somewhere. Now here's another type of local that I was referring to earlier that I tend to focus on. I call it travel local. I like to go to Canyon Lake quite a bit. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from Friendswood. Linda lives up in the Austin area, so that's not all that far from where Linda is headquartered from. but I make this trip quite often, but it's generally not to do photography. It's usually with family or friends, that sort of thing. So I always bring my camera gear everywhere I go. But if you've experienced this too, where you haven't necessarily been able to go on a photography trip, but you lug around your camera gear and everybody just moans and they roll their eyes. Oh, here we go again. You're going to bring your camera and you're going to want to go take photographs. And yeah. So I always try to take some time to do that sort of thing. So this was last summer. Got a 2-bedroom condo up on one of the little finger sections of Canyon Lake. And it was a rainy week, the week that we happened to be there. But we were off doing things. You have to kind of go with the flow. And this was a mid to late afternoon time frame. And I was out sitting on the balcony, and there's a road basically that separates the condo that I was staying in from this little section of Canyon Lake. And I saw all these storm clouds coming in. So I walked right back in the condo, got my camera gear, set my tripod up, took a few shots, and captured this for a late afternoon shot of Canyon Lake. What's interesting is it's a highway that's quite busy and cars are passing left and right. Just down below in front of me, there's a grocery store that's a little bit off to the left. There's some other businesses and restaurants that are out to the other side. So you frame it, set up your composition right, and you can get some really nice shots. This is a little bit different composition of the same part of the lake, taken from the balcony about 4 or 5 hours later. What was kind of cool about this, was that post-rain summer evening feeling. It's damp, nice cool breeze is coming through, and the atmosphere was just right. So you're able to capture something there as well, and really kind of like the mood that this photograph portrays. This is taken from the balcony of the condo that I was staying in. This is off of the Madrone Trail, which is basically a bike trail that goes around another part of Canyon Lake, another little finger-like section. The grocery store is just up the road to the left. There's the Brookshire Brothers. So I'm out early one morning just looking for compositions, and was kind of depressed because I didn't really find anything that I liked until I ran across this tree. So was able to capture it and catch it with the sun coming through. This is the Guadalupe River, where it comes out of the Canyon Lake Dam. This is a power station. You can kind of see the dam that's back out there in the distance. And all of these shots, the last 2 or 3 shots, basically, these are all within maybe 1.5 miles to 2 miles of each other. They're not very far apart. This was last July, right at dusk. There are people all around behind me and to the right from where I'm standing. And it's about 100, 101 degrees, and I'm just dripping with sweat. But what's so cool about this part of the river especially, there are a ton of cypress trees. And we were in drought phase again last summer. I think we're still in a drought phase as far as the water levels are concerned. But more of the cypress tree roots were left exposed, and I just thought it was a fascinating thing to see. So set up and took several shots here. Happened to be releasing water from the dam to keep the water level at least at a bare minimum in this section of the Guadalupe River. This was shot with a circular polarizer, probably maybe a 1 to 2 second time exposure, maybe. But it's just funny because just outside of the frame to the left is a whole group of kids. They're just yelling and screaming, and the water, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Guadalupe River, the water is ice cold, especially in the wintertime. But in the summertime, it'd be 101 degrees outside, but it's like you're stepping into an ice house or an ice bath when you step into the water here. This is another shot taken probably about 15 yards from the last photo. And this tree up in this area is that same tree that we saw by the power station. This giant cypress tree root that's going through here caught my eye initially because it had somebody's t-shirt hanging over it. They were in the water swimming, so I had to move their t-shirt and then take the shot and put their t-shirt back so they could still find it when they got out of the water. But it was just one of those times. I was very fortunate. Sun was really low in the sky. It was just below the top of the tree line, so got a little sunbeam coming through in the upper part of the photo for this shot. And some of y'all have seen this one. This is taken also within 5 or 10 yards of the last couple. This is a longer exposure shot of the Guadalupe River. But I like the leading line. You know, that's the things you're looking for, regardless of what type of photography that you're doing or where you're going, whether it's an epic location or it's just someplace along a river. Look for things to lead the viewer's eye into the frame. Look for things to kind of look through to help them look around the photograph and then stay for a little while. But again, this is 10, 15 yards away from the last shot. This is the trail that comes down to where I was standing. If you follow this up, it kind of goes to the left and then goes to the right, and that's where the cars are parked. So this is the Guadalupe River South Trail. And I kind of thought about it when I was coming down as a shot, possibly. But I was so intrigued by the river, wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to it until I was ready to leave. Then I was coming out, I saw this and I said, I've got to take a shot. So took a few shots here too. But this is just, you know, the access way back to the cars to get out of the house, or to get out of the river area to go back to the house, if you will. This is in the river, looking toward where the power station is. This is probably another 20 or 25 yards just around the bend from where I was before. The water here is maybe ankle deep, if that. And there's a lady and her daughter just to the right of me that are splashing and playing in the water. And the whole time that I'm setting up, trying to get my camera set up on the tripod, she's saying, "Mommy, mommy, what's that man doing? What's he taking a picture of?" So, you know, it's a little distracting. But I just like the leading lines. I like the reflection off the water. But from where my condo is, I'm probably 2.5 miles away from where we were staying. And this is my last shot, but this was just around the corner from where the dam is. This is called the Gorge, the Canyon Lake Gorge, if you will, and had to pay, I think it was $8 to go in for a quote unquote self-guided tour. By the time I got there, it was probably about 7 o'clock, late July, and everybody had to be out of there by 8. And it's like a 6 or 7 mile loop to go from one end to the other. So I had my backpack on with all my camera gear, and I'm kind of jogging through trying to find something, and ran across this. This was a tough shot, as anybody knows, with the different shadows and the different the strong light on the left with varying shadows on the right. So it took a little bit of time to go through and set up the composure, take several different shots, and then bring them into Photoshop and work with it after that. But again, all of these travel local type of shots, 2 to 3 miles from the condo that I was staying in. And it was a vacation / photography trip, if you will. So when you're out, I'm sure all of y'all do that anyway. You're always with your camera, but look for things that you can portray that might be familiar to everybody, but try to portray it in a more epic or a dramatic or an unfamiliar way. It hones your photography skills. It helps your compositional skills and different ways that you can work to better yourself as a photographer when you do get the opportunity to go to those epic places and then get those epic shots. But that's all I have, Linda. I am through.
That was awesome, Mark. I'm going to get you to take down your screen. So the thing that resonated with me is I'm a traveler and I'm always looking for where's my next vacation and what are the wonderful scenes that I'm going to find on that exotic trip that very few of my friends get to go on. But what resonated here with me is I didn't grow up in one of those little places that are, full of beaches and mountains and wonderful waterfalls. I grew up in a teeny tiny little town called Catula, and there's nothing exciting there. But when I'm down there, I put some effort into exploring, using my car as a blind. And I come back with these photos that some of my high school friends will look at on Facebook, and they're like, where in Coachella did you take these? And that's kind of the way when I'm looking at your presentation, it's you've taken everyday scenes. We drive by them, we walk by them, we might notice them, but we don't put any effort into it. And that's what the photos that you shared tonight. I'm like, wait a minute, that's Friendswood. I've been to Friendswood. This just looks like
There's not much here.
There's not much there. And that's what's been really kind of fun for me to listen to you talk and show your photos. There are several people. Jan is one of them. Rose is also mentioned. She's like 20 minutes from Canyon Lake. Jen was looking at the low clouds while you're showing the picture of Canyon Lake. So it's, I hope that provokes those people to kind of look at, hey, that's my backyard. And he made some photos that are interesting and had a story with them. So with that, Mark, I'm really, really appreciative of you sharing this, because it, like I said before we started, it's like, I'm kind of tired of, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this now and recording, but I'm really tired of Death Valley. It's like, how many salt crack pictures do I have to look at? And I'll be, forthcoming. When I was there, I took a lot of pictures of those salt cracks, but they're becoming so mainstream, and everybody's looking for those big, epic photographs. And I think sometimes shooting local, shooting what's in your backyard, it's just more interesting. Maybe that's the phase I'm going through right now. So that's what I got out of your presentation. So
thank you. What's really cool about it is, for example, the South Bend Ellington Chamber of Commerce, 4 of my photographs are hanging up in their offices. I'm working now with the Friendswood Chamber of Commerce, and I encourage everybody to do a project, regardless of what that project is. I know you have a speaker coming up that's going to talk a lot more about that. Right. But I'm putting together a book that's going to be Friendswood based. So I've got a lot more ideas, a lot of other things I want to shoot before I start to compile the book together. But at least it gives you something that you can do in between those epic vacations that you can go on and take those shots.
And you've made a point that I have said over a couple of times, because I'm trying to drill it through somebody's brain. Hopefully she's paying attention tonight. But it's the things that you're shooting, nobody else is taking those pictures. That's like a project. And there's an audience for that. There's a market for it. It's basically niching down. And right. You've taken a step farther. You've actually approached these Chamber of Commerces or these businesses to say, hey, I took this photo. And I don't know if everyone's purchased a photo or if you've just said, hey, here's a photo for, thought you might like it. But it's that knocking on the door, making a connection, because they're going to remember that. And who knows what projects they have that they could use your work. So just another little thing is we're so bad at marketing ourselves. So people, just kind of start thinking about that when you're, I sit on a lot of photos thinking nobody cares about this, but once you start showing it to the right people, you can make some money with your work. So All right, with that, Mark, I was looking at giving people a few minutes to leave some questions. I don't see any questions. I've got a lot of nice comments about your work, and I definitely will share this chat with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks for coming as a guest speaker.
Thank
And
you. It's an honor to be here.
I hope it was fun for you.
Oh, yes, it was. It really was.
A lot of times people will say, gosh, you made me like flip through my catalog that, they're finding photos that they've kind of forgotten that they've gotten or that they have. So it's another way to kind of like, take a peek into, people's closets. So Mark, with that, I'm going to thank you for coming and sharing what you know. Everyone, if you'd like to connect with Mark, you can at grstudios.com. And if you're on Instagram, give him a follow at gr.studios.photography. And I will drop those in the notes section of the YouTube channel. So next week, we're going to do a show and tell. So if you'd like to share one of your images and the story behind it, send me a note at info@lindanickell.com. And until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.